Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 104 based on novel. So let's start. After the six-leaf shaman Wang Lin was secretly following arrived, he turned back into a person, and at that moment, Wang Lin hid himself. With his cultivation, no one here could detect him. Only the eight-leaf shaman on the tree was powerful enough to detect Wang Lin. Wang Lin was able to see at a glance that the eight-leaf shaman was seriously injured and very weak. Just at this moment, all of the shamans around the reincarnation tree sat down in the lotus position and began to recite a complex chant. Soon, tattoos began to appear in front of each shaman and floated before them. At this moment, the cultivators behind the shamans all walked up to the foot of the reincarnation tree and sat down. There were almost 100 cultivators filling up the area. Wang Lin knew that all these cultivators had very similar cultivation levels, all of them were at the core formation stage. The moment those 100 or so cultivators sat down, all of the six-leaf shamans let out roars. The roars were loud and strange, and they caused all of the tattoos to charge toward the reincarnation tree. In the blink of an eye, the tattoos disappeared into the reincarnation tree. However, the reincarnation tree immediately trembled, and then strands of soft branches began to grow from it. The branches moved like snakes as they grew and soon began wrapping around the cultivators. In the blink of an eye, almost all of the cultivators were wrapped by the branches and dragged into the air. This scene was very weird to Wang Lin. Countless branches grew from this reincarnation tree and wrapped around the cultivators. With the movements of the branches, this reincarnation tree almost seemed alive. He is healing. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. Countless tattoos appeared, and after a flash of light, all of the cultivators' bodies started trembling. All of the nutrients from their bodies were being rapidly depleted. At the same time, all of the spiritual energy charged from their bodies to the tree branches like uncontrollable wild horses. After the nutrients and spiritual energy were absorbed by the tree, they were somehow converted into the mysterious energy that the eight-leaf shaman could use to heal. The wound on this person's chest slowly closed, and his aura was also gradually recovering. Wang Lin's eyes became cold, and then he suddenly moved. At the speed which none of the six-leaf shamans could detect, Wang Lin charged up and appeared next to the eight-leaf shaman. His speed was as fast as lightning. The moment he appeared, his palm smashed down on the light surrounding the eight-leaf shaman. Wang Lin's right hand released a milky white glow. This meant that he was using celestial spiritual energy. His choices were to either act or not act, and if he did act, then he would not show any mercy and would kill the enemy in one strike. The eight-leaf shaman inside the white light opened his eyes, which were filled with terror. Wang Lin's palm landed on the white light, and then an earth-shattering sound filled the fourth layer. The powerful impact caused waves of shockwaves to spread, knocking the surrounding six-leaf shamans back more than 1,000 feet. Each of them coughed out blood, and the tattoos on their bodies all became unstable. One misstep would mean their deaths. One of the six-leaf shamans shouted, after coughing out blood, "Soul transformation cultivator." The moment the person shouted, all of the other six-leaf shamans trembled and then began to escape. If it was before Wang Lin had reached the soul transformation stage, he couldn't have used such destructive power without using a treasure. The power of that palm just now was as powerful as a punch from his original body, which was a 3-star ancient god. It was because that palm contained celestial spiritual energy. The reason soul transformation cultivators are powerful and will receive respect on any cultivation planet is because of the existence of celestial spiritual energy. The light around the eight-leaf shaman shattered, causing the old man to tremble and cough out blood. Then the ancient tattoo over his head quickly descended to block the celestial spiritual energy. A powerful force surged from the tattoo, causing Wang Lin's palm to slow down for a split second. With this pause, the eight-leaf shaman let out a roar and quickly backed up. He moved as fast as a meteor to escape. "You can't escape." Wang Lin's eyes became cold, and he pressed down on the reincarnation tree. Celestial spiritual energy surged into the reincarnation tree, and following a series of crackling and popping sounds, the entire reincarnation tree shattered into small pieces. The branches extending from the tree all shattered, and the 100 or so cultivators all fell down. The moment they landed, their eyes became clear and their confusion disappeared. "Leave this place." Wang Lin said this one sentence as he charged out after the eight-leaf shaman. He slapped his bag of holding, and the mosquito beast appeared. The mosquito had been with Wang Lin for a long time, and it had long since gained intelligence. Without Wang Lin even needing to give it an order, the mosquito knew what its master wanted. After it appeared, the mosquito beast let out a roar and turned into a black ray of light as it chased after one of the escaping six-leaf shamans. Its large proboscis then stabbed into the head of the six-leaf shaman. The six-leaf shaman let out a miserable scream as his insides were sucked dry until he was only a bag of bones and died. After killing one, the mosquito threw away the dried-up corpse and charged after the next one. With its speed, no matter how fast those six-leaf shamans ran, they weren't faster than the mosquito. Those core formation cultivators who survived got up. One of them immediately recognized Wang Lin and shouted in excitement, "Founder!" Wang Lin turned around to look at the person who had called him founder. This person looked unfamiliar and he didn't ask as he chased after the eight-leaf shaman. Although all of this sounds like it took place over a very long period of time, all happened in a few seconds. Wang Lin flew like lightning. Before him, the eight-leaf shaman's face was pale while he clenched his teeth and tried to escape. He was originally an eight-leaf shaman under the fifth ancestor. Even within the Forsaken Immortal clan, he had a very high position. During this war, countless cultivators died by his hand. 1 month ago, he was heavily injured by a late-stage soul transformation cultivator. After almost dying, he was sent back here to recover. However, he didn't expect a soul transformation cultivator to appear while he was recovering. As long as I can escape to the 11th floor, I'll be saved. The third ancestor was injured by Zuqzi while protecting an ancestral spirit. As long as I can reach the 11th floor, the third ancestor will definitely save me. The eight-leaf shaman clenched his teeth and charged toward the entrance to the fifth layer. Wang Lin chased closely after the old man. His eyes became cold as he slapped his bag of holding and took out the celestial sword. He took a deep breath and then poured celestial spiritual energy into the celestial sword. Wang Lin whispered, "Accept your death." Then he raised his right hand, the celestial sword started glowing white, and he slashed down. There was a bright glow that seemed to light up the entire fourth layer as the sword energy from the celestial sword shot out. The eight-leaf shaman's expression changed greatly. Without even looking back, he could feel the powerful aura behind him that made his hair stand up. If he wasn't injured, he could have dealt with it, but right now he was heavily injured and had almost no energy left. The old man let out a bitter roar as he suddenly turned around. His eyes were filled with madness. He looked at the incoming sword energy and hit his forehead with his palm as he shouted, "Ancestral tattoo!" The tattoo that was floating above him while he was healing and helped block that palm from Wang Lin appeared. This tattoo was very complicated and was filled with an ancient aura. Wang Lin's eyes were cold as he stopped 1,000 feet away. At the moment he stopped, the sword energy collided with the tattoo. Boom! A loud boom created a shockwave 30 feet tall that quickly spread and shaved 3 inches off the ground. Crackling sounds came from the tattoo and then it shattered. The eyes of the eight-leaf shaman slowly dimmed and his life quickly dissipated. A large amount of blood came out from the wound on the old man's chest. Although his eyes were dim, he looked at Wang Lin with a vicious gaze and asked, "Who are you?" "I won't tell you who I am." Wang Lin moved forward and appeared next to the old man. His hand formed a seal and he placed a restriction on him. Then he waved the celestial sword and the old man's head detached from his body. The old man's body fell to the ground. Wang Lin's right hand pointed at the head. After a while he frowned and muttered, "No soul?" At the moment he cut off the old man's head, he activated the soul refining sect technique that could ensure the soul would stay in the skull and not dissipate. He pondered a bit as he looked at the skull. Then he waved his hand and a ghostly fire surrounded the skull. With some sizzling sounds, the old man's head was quickly refined. However, this person's skull showed no signs of melting under this flame. There seemed to be a broken, black symbol engraved into the skull. This symbol was exactly the same as the ancestral tattoo the old man had just used. After pondering a bit, Wang Lin placed the skull inside his bag of holding and flew away. As he flew, he could hear sonic booms getting closer to him. The mosquito beast quickly came into view. Its mouth was stained with blood and its eyes were glowing with a look of pleasure. After putting away the mosquito beast, Wang Lin checked the fourth layer again. After finding no more reincarnation trees, he entered the fifth layer. The fifth layer was larger than the fourth layer and not nearly as barren. There were the algae-like plants like the ones he saw back in Tube growing here. Looking from above, there were massive patches of these green plants. The leaves on these plants moved in a mysterious pattern. If one looked at them for too long, their body would move along with the leaves. On the fifth layer, Wang Lin noticed 3 reincarnation trees, and on top of each one sat an 8-leaf shaman. All of their injuries were grave and they were on the verge of dying. Wang Lin's eyes became cold and then he teleported toward one of them. However, just as he appeared next to the reincarnation tree, his expression changed and he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was 1,000 feet away. The algae-like plants had begun to move the moment he appeared and then collided with each other at the spot where Wang Lin previously was. Shortly after, all of the algae plants on the fifth layer gathered together to form human figures. These figures were completely made of algae plants and gave off a strange aura. Their lower limbs were linked with the algae plants on the ground and also moved in the same mysterious manner. In the blink of an eye, a countless number of these strange life forms appeared around Wang Lin. "Foreigner, leave this place." A genderless voice came from the mouths of these plants and echoed across the layer. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. Every one of these life forms had the cultivation of a nascent soul cultivator. He didn't have time to deal with these life forms, so he waved his hand and the 1 billion soul flag appeared in his grasp. Wang Lin softly said, "Souls, scatter." The souls suddenly came out one by one and surrounded the soul flag. There was a bit more than 600 million soul fragments and 26 primary souls, including Du Qian's soul, in the 1 billion soul flag. These soul fragments couldn't form a late-stage ascendant cultivator when fused together or even a mid-stage ascendant cultivator. However, they could still fuse to create an early-stage ascendant cultivator. Wang Lin knew that he had to act quickly during this trip and not waste any time, so he took out the 1 billion soul flag immediately. Wang Lin shouted, "Fuse!" 500 million soul fragments and more than a dozen primary souls fused to create a powerful ascendant soul fragment. The moment the soul appeared, the entire fifth layer trembled. The remaining soul fragments and primary souls circled around Wang Lin while letting out ghostly wails. Wang Lin knew that this ascendant soul couldn't stay up for too long, so he shouted, "Kill!" The early-stage ascendant cultivator's eyes lit up and he waved his hand. At this moment, all of the algae-like plants on the fifth layer disintegrated. Wang Lin didn't pause, he charged toward the reincarnation tree and pointed at it. All of the soul fragments around him charged forth to devour the reincarnation tree. The reincarnation tree immediately collapsed and the 8-leaf shaman above it coughed out a mouthful of blood and died. This process continued as Wang Lin led the ascendant soul along with the 1 billion soul flag and swept across the fifth layer. The remaining 2 8-leaf shamans that were healing were also killed by him, had their bodies refined, and he put away their skulls. Wang Lin didn't have any goodwill toward the Forsaken Immortal clan. He quickly flew to the 6th layer, and in there he was like a demon that killed any Forsaken Immortal clan member he saw. His targets were the reincarnation trees. On the 6th layer there were 3 reincarnation trees. Thanks to the power of the early-stage ascendant soul, the 3 people healing on the 6th layer died too. Wang Lin charged through the 7th layer, the 8th layer, directly to the 10th layer. In the 10th layer, the ascendant soul collapsed into weak soul fragments. They returned to the soul flag and couldn't be called out again. The 1 billion soul flag was put away by Wang Lin. Along the way, he got to study the soul flag. Although the ascendant soul was powerful, its duration was too short and there was still a difference in power compared to a real ascendant cultivator. In addition, the damage to the soul fragments was extensive with every use. This was why Du Qian merely summoned it to scare people and not to have it fight. Along the way, including the one he killed earlier, Wang Lin killed a total of 19 8-leaf shamans. All of them were already heavily injured and died without knowing what really happened. All later layers had the mysterious plants acting as guardians like the 6th layer did. If Wang Lin didn't have the ascendant soul, he would have been stopped at the 6th layer. Even the Forsaken Immortal clan wouldn't have expected an ascendant cultivator to kill his way into their home. After all, there were only 3 ascendant cultivators on the planet excluding Yun QZ. Shu QZ was at Mount Suzaku, Chu Yunfei had been scared off the planet, and the last ascendant cultivator of the earth-shattering sect was heavily injured and currently recovering in a secret location. If there were no ascendant cultivators, then with the defenses prepared for the immortal graveyard, there would have been no problem. From the 6th layer to the 10th layer, Wang Lin had a great harvest. He didn't know what use the skulls had, but he didn't expect the Forsaken Immortal clan to have so many spirit stones stocked up. According to logic, these spirit stones were useless to the Forsaken Immortal clan. Their tattoo power came from demonic beasts, so these spirit stones should have been useless to them. Although spirit stones didn't really catch Wang Lin's eyes anymore, these were currency used among cultivators, so the more the better. Along the way, Wang Lin collected a large amount of spirit stones. Even if you place these spirit stones in a rank for cultivation country's sect, they would be enough to last the sect 1,000 years. But compared to these spirit stones, the skulls of these 8-leaf shamans interested Wang Lin much more. Each one of the skulls had a unique tattoo on it, and the aura they give off matched that of a soul transformation cultivator. Wang Lin had a feeling that these skulls weren't simple and were worth far more than the spirit stones. His feeling was accurate. On planet Qianyun, these essences of people who used different types of powers than cultivators were worth a lot. The essences of members of the Forsaken Immortal clan were in their skulls. If a secret technique was used, the tattoo could be removed from the skull, allowing someone to gain its power. If one can obtain the skull of a 9-leaf shaman or higher, their value is even greater. Among the stars, there are some natives on some planets with their own mysterious powers that are very different from cultivators. These natives have caught the attention of the Cultivation Alliance. The Cultivation Alliance doesn't wipe them out but captures them in a way. They allow generations of them to grow so that they can harvest each generation and create an endless supply of these essences. To raise another race in captivity, they naturally have to be given food. Wang Lin had a total of 19 skulls. After carefully putting them away, he looked at the entrance to the 11th layer and began to hesitate. He didn't know how many layers the immortal graveyard had, and if he didn't have the ascendant soul, there would have been no way for him to get this far. He had confidence about the 11th layer. However, he had a mysterious feeling that there was something in the 11th layer calling him. Wang Lin sneered. He didn't rush down but began to set a formation. This formation was the one that Du Tian had taught him in order to counter the giant demon clan ancestor's bloodline power. It was a small transfer array. He easily placed down the formation and placed down a piece of celestial jade. Wang Lin looked toward the 11th layer. It was completely dark and had black smoke coming out of it. This was different from the other layers. Wang Lin held the celestial sword in his right hand, gathered his celestial spiritual energy, and jumped into the tunnel. This tunnel wasn't very deep, so it didn't take long for Wang Lin to exit the tunnel and enter the 11th layer. At the moment he entered, his expression became strange. The 11th layer wasn't very large and there were channels dug out across the ground. The channels formed the shape of a tattoo and there was red liquid flowing inside them. The thing that left an impression in Wang Lin's mind was the red tattoo formed by the channels. At the same time, a cold aura came out from the ground. This was clearly a place of extreme yin. In the center of the tattoo floated a naked woman. Her hair moved without any wind and she gave off a demonic aura. This woman's body was very voluptuous and perfect. There was no trace of tattoos on her body besides a 9-leaf plant on her forehead. She was very beautiful. Aside from the celestial corpse, the only person that Wang Lin has seen that was as beautiful as her was Liu Mai. He had never met her before, yet she gave off a familiar feeling. There was an open scroll floating above the woman, and there were 9 golden lights on the scroll that formed a circle. Strands of black gas were coming out from the scroll and entering the woman's forehead. The moment he saw the scroll, his heart trembled. The scroll looked very familiar. It looked exactly like the scroll in his bag that he still hadn't figured out how to use. At this moment, the blood tattoo suddenly glowed bright red and the woman at the center slowly opened her eyes. Her eyes were very bright. There was hint of a demonic light in her eyes, making her look very alluring. Her slightly demonic gaze would cause anyone who looked at her to enter a state of confusion. After seeing this woman's eyes, he suddenly started trembling. He finally realized why this woman looked so familiar. The celestial sword in Wang Lin's hand began to hum. The sword spirit Shuligua flew out from the sword and muttered, "Little sister fairy. Thank you for delivering the soul fragment formed from my domain when I reincarnated into a cultivator." Wang Lin's expression was ugly as he silently stared at her. Shuligua's eyes were locked onto the woman as he left the sword and flew toward her. He muttered, Little sister fairy, don't be scared. Your big brother Shu is coming. The woman let out a smile. Her eyes revealed a mysterious light as she raised her delicate hand and pointed at Shulikwa's forehead. The moment her finger landed, Shulikwa revealed a sneer and his body disappeared. Replacing him was a ray of sword energy. Slut, your grandfather Shu has already suffered once. How could I repeat the same mistake? The smile on the woman's face widened and then she gently blew at the sword energy. The sword energy suddenly shattered when it was hit by her breath. This scene scared Shulikwa so much that he immediately returned to Wang Lin and went back inside the celestial sword. Wang Lin asked, with a heavy tone, "Who are you?" The woman looked at Wang Lin and slowly said, "Among the cultivators, I was called my Ji, and in the Forsaken Immortal clan, I'm the third ancestor." Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he slowly said, "So it is Lord Third Ancestor. Junior was rude to rush in here and will take his leave." With that, he began to back away. Ripples appeared in the woman's eyes and she said, "Don't go calling me Lord Third Ancestor, I like it better when people call me my Ji. You can leave today, but only if you are obedient." The woman pointed at the air and the tunnel leading to the 10th layer immediately sealed up. Wang Lin frowned. He coldly stared at the woman and asked, "What does senior mean?" The woman placed a finger near her mouth. Her eyes were filled with an alluring charm as she smiled. "What other meaning could I have? I just want you to experience the beauty of life. I can smell a very clean aura coming from your body. I believe that you still haven't tasted a woman yet. Lucky me." Wang Lin's eyes became even colder and he calmly said, "For you to be here means you are gravely injured. Lord Third Ancestor, do you recognize this item?" With that, he slapped his bag of holding and the 1 billion soul flag appeared. The soul fragments flew out along with their ghostly wails. These ghostly wails directly affected one soul. The woman's eyes lit up. She stared at the soul flag and said, word for word, 1 billion soul flag. Wang Lin's left hand pointed at the celestial sword and it began to glow. Then he swung the sword and slashed at the ground. With a boom, a deep trench appeared on the ground. Wang Lin looked at the woman and said, "I only used 10% of my celestial spiritual energy in that attack. So it's a celestial treasure." The woman's eyes became cold. "Do you think you can kill me with those 2 treasures? If you were at full power, I would have no confidence, but I'm sure that you are heavily injured. Senior, don't force me, it won't be good for either one of us. As for today's matter, I'll leave this immortal graveyard and you can continue to heal." He had no confidence against this woman. After all, she was an existence similar to an ascendant cultivator. Even if she was injured, she would still have some methods to use. She was unlike those 8-leaf shamans that Wang Lin could easily kill with the help of the ascendant soul. The woman faintly smiled. She looked at Wang Lin like he was her lover and let out an alluring laugh. "I'm not being hard on you, I only want to experience spring with you. Why keep me outside the door? Besides, the immortal graveyard has 19 layers in total. Once you get past Big Sister here, you can find the secret of my Forsaken Immortal clan's tattoo power. More importantly, it is guarded by the soul fragment of my Forsaken Immortal clan's first ancestor. You have the 1 billion soul flag, don't you want to go collect the first ancestor's soul fragment?" Wang Lin stared at her. His voice was cold as he said, "I'll give you 3 breaths of time. Whether I leave or fight depends on you." The woman let out a sigh and pointed at the air. The tunnel that had disappeared reappeared. "Since you don't want to get comfortable with me, I can only let you leave, but you must leave behind that domain soul fragment." Wang Lin backed up and calmly said, "Once I leave the immortal graveyard, I'll release it. With your power, it shouldn't be hard to capture it." With that, Wang Lin moved like lightning toward the tunnel. The woman's eyes became cold. She sneered and thought, "I want to see how you walk into the trap." However, her smile suddenly froze. She saw Wang Lin suddenly stop outside the tunnel. His hand moved and then celestial spiritual energy surrounded him. Then formation appeared under his feet and he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was inside the formation he had placed in the 10th layer. After he reappeared, he didn't pause and continued to escape. What a cautious little cultivator. He's really making me like him a lot. If I suck him dry, it should allow my tattoo power to recover a bit. The woman licked her lips and revealed a devious light in her eyes. If he had acted there, it would have been difficult. If he had destroyed this place, I would have had to steal my heart and kill him. That would have been a waste. Now that he has left this place, I'm free to use my power to capture him and enjoy myself. No one big sister fancies can get away. She pointed at the scroll above her and said, "Capture him and bring him back here." With that, the scroll closed and disappeared. A soul transformation brat that hasn't tasted a woman yet. The woman touched her lips. Her eyes revealed a devilish gaze and she whispered, "Quickly come back, little guy. Big sister can't wait anymore." Wang Lin flew very quickly with his divine sense spread out. He didn't believe that she would just let him leave, so he moved as quickly as he could and soon arrived at the second layer. He saw the tunnel to the first layer and was about to teleport there when his expression suddenly changed and he swung the celestial sword backwards. There was a scratching sound as the sword energy hit something in the air behind him. The scroll that was above the woman's head revealed its illusionary figure in the air. Wang Lin's expression was gloomy as he turned around to look at the scroll. A demonic black gas was flowing out of the scroll. The scroll slowly opened up, revealing the 10 golden purple dots that formed a circle. These dots released a mysterious power and then suddenly turned. A snake tattoo materialized from the 10 points of light and flew out. It suddenly turned into a fierce 1,000-foot-long dragon. The aura coming from this dragon was on the same level as a desolate beast. The moment it appeared, it let out a sudden roar and charged toward Wang Lin. The snake tattoo that appeared earlier was flashing on the dragon's forehead. Wang Lin swung the celestial sword. The sword energy went right through the dragon as if it wasn't real. Could it be that celestial spiritual energy is useless against it? Wang Lin was shocked. A fishy smell drifted over as the dragon charged at him. Wang Lin's hand quickly formed a seal to create a restriction. This restriction, which contained celestial spiritual energy, quickly landed on the dragon's head. Boom! With a loud bang, the dragon backed off in pain. The restriction covered the dragon's mouth like a big net, so it could longer open its mouth. The dragon growled as it charged toward Wang Lin like lightning. Wang Lin's eyes lit up and he moved the celestial sword to block in front of him. The dragon smashed into the celestial sword and Wang Lin used this force to reach the tunnel to the first layer. Then he disappeared without a trace. At this moment, the 10 dots on the scroll spun once more and a tiger tattoo appeared. It turned into a giant, 1,000-foot-long black tiger. The moment it appeared, it waved its paw and destroyed the restriction on the dragon's mouth. The dragon and tiger quickly chased after Wang Lin into the first layer. Behind them, the scroll released a demonic light and slowly followed. Just as Wang Lin arrived at the first layer, the dragon and tiger caught up. To try to trap me with a mere treasure, you have underestimated me. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. He slapped his bag of holding and an item appeared in his hand. This item was the scroll that he couldn't control even now. Seeing the same scroll as this one, Wang Lin decided to follow his gut and try this scroll out. The moment this scroll appeared, the dragon and tiger paused and didn't dare to come closer. They stopped 1,000 feet away and began to roar. Their eyes were filled with suspicion. Wang Lin's eyes lit up as he held up the scroll and opened it. His scroll was completely black and only had one golden purple dot. The moment the scroll opened up, the dragon and tiger stopped roaring. They started staring at the scroll with a mysterious light in their eyes. At this moment, the scroll with the 10 golden purple dots caught up. This scene was somewhat strange. The identical scrolls were thousands of feet apart with a dragon and tiger between them. They looked at the two scrolls and their eyes were filled with confusion. At the 11th layer, the third ancestor's expression changed greatly. The tattoo beast Atlas. Why does this person have my forsaken immortal clan's treasure? Could it be one that an ancestor left it outside? The woman's eyes lit up and she whispered, "Return." The moment she said that word, the scroll with the 10 dots trembled. The dragon and tiger turned into two rays of light and flew toward the scroll. Just at this moment, the only dot in Wang Lin's scroll flashed and appeared in the shape of a woman. One couldn't see the exact features of this woman, only her silhouette. This video will end here.